totally my honor and privilege to be inviting and opening up our very first seminar with our first presenter, who is a dear friend of mine, Roo Heins Sensei. Sensei Heins started her training in the 90s and trained in San Diego under Chiba Sensei specifically. And then in 2014, moved to Tokyo to train at Hombu Dojo. And also that is where she started the tea ceremony. And I have to say, I had the privilege of having Heins Sensei at my dojo in Seattle, offering a seminar and then finishing the seminar with tea, which was really just a lovely way to have a different focus in our Budo training. But the similarities to me just are just beautiful. So it is an honor to be able to have her start our seminar with the tea ceremony. And we will, if you would like to ask any questions, if you want to type them into the chat, if we have time at the end, I think Heins Sensei will be available to answer any questions that you may have. And she'll also just give us a brief introduction to the tea as she starts. So please take it away, Roo Heins Sensei.
Yoroshiku. Thank you, Mallory. I moved to Tokyo in 2004, not 2014. So I've been doing tea for 16 years, I guess. I actually started in 2005, so 15 years. My teacher is a very unusual Japanese man named Yamada Kazeharu. He has an independent tea school. He's not affiliated with the Kyoto schools. Very traditional, old school guy, but with the most compassionate heart and many similarities to my Aikido teacher. The tea ceremony begins and ends with a bow to the sensu, the fan. Just to let you know when we're starting and when we're ending. I'm adapting things a little bit. I don't have a guest, and my space obviously is not ideal. I had some technical difficulties and I had to change. Couldn't do it at the dojo. So I'm in a smaller space right now and the light's not great, but I hope you can still feel the essence of tea ceremony and understand that Aikido and tea are the same. It's the same path. And it's about being present. It's about connecting to the person in front of you. And it's about transforming your own self through your practice. That's how I view it. So after, if we have time, I'll answer some questions. Today, the ceremony I'm doing is using a chabako, a tea box. The ceremony is called Nishikidate, which means a brocade presentation. It's a kind of elaborate one that I really enjoy. And as I said, I'll adapt after I make the tea, I will show you how to drink a bowl of tea, and I'll break out of the tea ceremony and drink it myself, which is really it's not orthodox. I'm sorry if anyone else studies tea, but I found this is the best way to kind of communicate the spirit of tea and the meaning to people. So that's how I'll manage it with your grace. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu. to adjust just a little bit. So at this point, if you're following along and you know tea ceremony, please take a sweet. If you don't, this is the point in the ceremony when you'll eat something sweet before you drink the bowl of tea, because the tea is a bit bitter and it's nice to eat a sweet before you drink it. So at this point in the tea ceremony, I'm breaking out now. I've made a bowl of tea for my guest using the utmost consideration for their needs and what I'm feeling their condition is at the moment. And the guest will then drink the tea. I don't have a guest right now, but I thought I would share with you kind of the process of drinking a bowl of tea during tea ceremony, because the role of the guest is equally important as the role of the host, just as uke and nage are equally important in Aikido. You can't make tea without a guest, really, as I'm doing here. So I'm playing the role of uke and nage. So the first thing the guest does is eat a sweet. These sweets are just kind of a traditional higashi dry sweet from Tokyo, and I'm afraid gotten a bit mush, but generally the sweets in tea are very sweet. They're mainly sugar, and they can be like yokan, like bean jam, and that's usually for thick tea. But casual tea ceremony like this is usually a dry sweet, so it'll just be kind of like maple sugar candy, but made from cane sugar. It's called wagashi. Wasanbon is the kind of sugar. So you enjoy your sweet, and then you take your bowl of tea, which is served to you. And first you bow to the person who made the tea for you. This is an expression of gratitude and acknowledgement. Then you take the bowl and put it on your left palm. You hold it from underneath so there's no chance of dropping it. And you bow to the tea to show your respect for the thing you've been given. Then you turn the bowl twice. And the reason you do this, because many bowls have patterns on them, you see, like this. And there will be a place that's called the shomen, that's like the main feature pattern. This bowl is kind of, doesn't have that, but some will. So you always turn the bowl so it'll be served to you with the pattern facing you to honor you as the guest. But you turn it to turn the pattern away from you to express your humility, because you don't want to drink from the most beautiful part of the bowl. Then you take your first sip. And you really savor it. You know, you feel it in your mouth and you inhale it and you feel the aroma and the taste of the tea and the heat of the water. And you look at the foam on the top of the tea, I guess. I'm not sure you can see it. And then you bow. Taihen kekko de gozaimasu. This is kind of old-fashioned Japanese, and it means very satisfactory, but it's a very polite phrase. So it really means that, you know, this is great. The second sip of tea, my teacher tells me, you should think about all the hands that went into making the tea, the people who picked the tea, the people who ground it, drying it, packaging it, shipping it all the way from Japan. And more than that, the people who grew the tea, the land that grew the tea, the people who brought the tea leaves from China to Japan to originally begin cultivating tea. All that history is right here in this bowl. And as you drink the tea, you should really consider it deeply and be grateful for all of that time and all of those generations of labor that brought you this bowl of tea. And the third sip, hontou oishii desu ne. Oh yes, it's really, truly, it's delicious. The third sip you finish and you'll slurp it a little bit so you get all the foam. You don't want to waste anything. Then you wipe the lip of the bowl where you drank from it, turn it back so it's facing the direction it was served to you in, and you return it to the host. And now I'll finish the second part of the tea ceremony. 一応姉妹にさせていただきます。With your permission, I'll conclude the ceremony.
ございました。本当にありがとうございました。
Thank you very much for participating. I can take some questions now, Mallory.
Thank you so much, Sensei. It was, I think, a very auspicious opening to our weekend and very clear. Your lovely comment about Aikido and tea being the same and how we manifest our intention just through the detail of our actions. I don't know about the rest of the participants, but I felt like I was actually tasting the tea with you during that. We have some wonderful questions. I'm going to try to summarize some of them, put them together. Someone has asked, could you just repeat the style of tea specifically that you did for us? And if there are different variations of tea, and are they for different people? Like, does tea only go to very important people?
Well, yeah, good question, great question. So this was tea ceremony, a chabako no temai, tea presentation using a chabako, a tea box. And with those 4 boards, these guys, this is called nishikidate. So it's, my teachers told me it's generally performed in the fall, but you can perform it anytime. All of these tea box ceremonies were developed for a picnic, an outdoor presentation or a presentation done outside the tea room. And my teacher, knowing I'm from America and suspecting correctly that I would not have regular access to a proper tea room, taught me, and he drilled into me the temai that are possible to do without, you know, the typical brazier and, you know, the ladle and the big, you know, kama, the kettle and all that. So one time I asked Sensei, how many ceremonies are there? How many temai are there, Sensei? Because there's the chabako ceremonies with the box, then there's obondate with the tray, and then there's many portable ceremonies developed by Senno Rikyu and other tea, notable people in tea over the years. And then there are the myriad traditional ceremonies performed in a tea room, both with tea and thin tea. And I said, you know, how many are there? And he did this. He just smiled and did this. Mugendai, that. Mugendai means infinity, the infinity symbol, right? And he's a very creative guy and he makes up his own. I remember coming back one year to visit him and he said, oh, Roo, let's figure out how to do thick tea with a chabako. He's like, I want to do this. And so together we kind of, you know, it didn't exist, but I said, well, you know, if I want to make thick tea in this ceremony, this is what I would do. And he was like, no, that won't work. Maybe we change this, you know, so we kind of worked it through. He's very creative. That he makes most of his own implements himself. He's a master potter, so all of his bowls, when you go to practice, are made by him. He's even made like the kama. He makes all his flower vases. The only thing he doesn't make himself is the lacquered chabako, because lacquering is lacquering to that degree. He lacquers some things himself, but to that degree is a really an art that he doesn't have. And the whisks, the chasen, and of course the white, the little white cloth, the chakin, the cleaning cloth. Those are also you buy from outside, and the tea. Everything else, pretty much the shells, the bowls, maybe he buys the ladles too, but he's incredible. Just the creativity and the mottainai, the waste not, want not mentality of tea is very important. So you never waste anything, and it comes out of the monastery because tea ceremony developed in the monastery. Monks are poor, you know, they can't, that's why you sip the last little bit of foam because you don't want to waste it. Long answer, sorry, but yeah.
No, beautiful, beautiful. And a really nice question here too. And again, similarities between tea and Aikido. There's a strict form to what you do, but how much personal expression is actually allowed in the ceremony?
Yeah, well, that's a very traditional Japanese thing, right? So, gyo, and shin, the 3 levels of formality, comes into calligraphy, comes into tea ceremony, comes into other arts. So is the least formal, you know, it's the most open. Gyo is like medium, and shin is very rigid. It's very formal, very regimented. So so in calligraphy is actually the most difficult. You think it's the easiest, and it's the first thing you learn when you learn tea ceremony is like a tray ceremony. No so, it's just bare bones. But that form actually allows for the most freedom of expression of yourself. So you start with it, and it's like shuhari, you know, when you get to ri, you go back to shu, right? But it's your shu, it's not your teacher's shu anymore, it's your expression. So you go back to so, to that very basic, and you express yourself. So my tea is my tea, very, you can see my teacher in it, of course, but there's some parts of it very like my Aikido, you know, it's like nobody else.
Yeah, great. How about, there's a question about the idea of wabi-sabi and the beauty of things as they age, and how much does that factor in to your presentation of tea or your understanding of it?
This is a good question. I mean, I think this is a typical thing people, especially Westerners, encounter. I think because of the literature that's come into the English language about tea. Wabi-sabi is very important, and it was a concept developed by Sen Noriki, the father of our kind of the modern tea ceremony, of looking for the beauty in old, broken things. My teacher, he comes to it a little bit more from a basic point of view of like, you waste nothing. So if something's old, if you lack something, you don't buy it. You find a way to utilize something else and bring that into the tea ceremony. So it's the same aesthetic, but not quite so. I don't know, other tea schools different from Yamada Sensei's school, I think, because they're a little bit more precious. You know, it's a little bit more, oh, this bowl was broken, but it's been repaired with gold lacquer. And of course we do that. You know, you don't want to throw a bowl away when it's broken. But I find it a little bit more close to the Zen ideal than to any specific idea of wabi-sabi. Just my perception.
Okay, speaking of Zen training, I'm going to finish up with this last question, which I think is very interesting. If you can talk about the two elements of service and suffering as key elements in the tea ceremony, and the suffering coming from having to sit in seiza for 2 hours.
Yeah. These things are not made explicit, you know. There's a lot, tea ceremony is interesting because you can scratch the surface and do fine for years and years, or you can go very deep into these kinds of ideas and find a very deep meaning in it for yourself. But nobody explains this kind of thing. Yeah, you sit seiza, and especially when I go back to Japan, my teacher's 96 now, by the way. Is he 96, maybe 90, 95? Anyway, he's getting quite old. And he stopped sitting seiza throughout a 6-hour practice maybe 5 years ago. So when I go back to Japan, I know the first day I do tea, he's gonna make me come in, and I train, you know, all day Saturday, 9 o'clock to 6 p.m. And most of that will be spent in seiza. But I can't complain. I don't want to complain, because from seiza you can see everything. You know, you go over to the bench on the side of the practice room, you're further away. You can't see what your senpai are doing, and you can't steal it, you know. And the service, yeah, we don't have time to talk about that, do we? But the idea, and I've written about this for the most recent issue of the Brooklyn Journal, the publication put out by Brooklyn Aikikai, the idea of the host, the authority in tea, humbling themselves to the greatest extent possible to elevate the guest, is really, really central to the idea of tea, and it's really the only, when we both shed our authority, the guest and the host both shed our authority, then we can connect on a very deep level as humans, and that to me is what tea is about. So, if you have any other questions, email me. I'll talk about it forever.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And I think with that, we will wrap up. But if people do want to keep typing in the chat, maybe there'll be an opportunity that maybe Heins Sensei can follow up with you. Again, just a wonderful way to start our seminar this weekend. We'll be posting the full schedule in between our sessions, but just to let everyone know, our next session is going to be a Boken cut class with Wendy Whitehead Sensei, who is also the head of ASU. So we are really pleased to have her offering our very first class. And we have a full day of classes from wonderful instructors, as well as interviews with 2 women Shihan, and then finishing up the day with a very, very special panel on Aikido and race. So again, a huge thank you from all of us to Roo Heins Sensei for starting off on what a wonderful offering.
I'm so grateful to you for putting this together, to everyone who put it together. You have no idea. And thanks to all the participants. This to see this happen is it really literally brings tears to my eyes. So thank you. And let's have a great weekend. Yoroshiku onegai shimasu.